Hi, everybody. I don't see the closed captions, and I'm guessing that means that you don't see them either. I'm sorry to Miriam and to everyone who was asking for that. I actually did figure it out. I had closed captions all day yesterday, so I will keep working on it. Okay, I have asked that in the chat to kick us off, you share the last incident from your life that put you into a state of fight, flight, freeze. So I'm already seeing near miss car accident. Mine was an erratic driver on the 405 that filled me with adrenaline. Car accident as well. Car crash. Okay, that's a perfect fight, flight, freeze scenario because it's actually life-threatening. This is the kind of survival threat the system was designed to respond to. Um, Seren hit us with running late to class when they had to do a presentation. Ooh, that'll fight, flight, freeze you. And it's so inconvenient to be experiencing these uncomfortable symptoms. The last thing you need when you're already stressed, about to do a presentation, and running late is to have your stomach flipping out on you, extra sweat that you didn't need, a racing heart, these uncomfortable symptoms that are meant to prepare you to battle an enemy or escape an attacking wildebeest are so inconvenient when you want to be calm, cool, and collected for a presentation. Oh, yeah, this sounds scary. Cindy says a big dog with no leash coming right at her with her two little dogs. So that's a perfect example of the kind of environmental threat that triggers fight, flight, freeze. It's literally a potential attacking animal. And not only was Cindy in this situation herself, she had her two little dogs to protect and defend. So that's exactly the kind of moment that gets the fight, flight, freeze system triggered up. Okay, I just want to scan and see if, oh, a home break-in. Okay, you guys, we've been living dramatic lives. Mine was honestly just seeing a van almost tip over. Now I'm not seeing, and this is interesting to me, because I asked a similar question to my psych students, and some of the answers were situations that are a lot less life-threatening than the ones you guys have been describing so far. In all of these instances, whether it's the potential animal attack with the big dog, all of these car crashes and near-miss car crashes, you had a really good reason biologically to go into fight, flight, freeze. You were in immediate danger, potentially life-threatening or, life and limb, limb threatening. So those are the sort of reasons we want the system to get kicked off and to respond. Okay, difficult relationship. Yeah, yeah. So this is a good example of how social interaction interacts with the nervous system. Um, whether it is fighting with your sweetheart or parenting challenges, any kind of trouble at home can really activate fight, flight, freeze and put us into a very uncomfortable state of stress. Thank you, Gladian. This is the kind of response I was hoping someone would share. Gladian says, what sent her into fight, flight, freeze was when someone sends me a paragraph that I was not expecting. So I assume this is via text. We all know what it's like to get hit with a word wall from, your significant other or a best friend that's mad at you and realize that you've got some communicating to do. So, this is a great example because it really highlights what makes us humans so different than our animal cousins. A big part of this class is figuring out what makes Homo sapiens special and the ways in which we aren't special and we're just another animal. So, we are special because we are capable of activating the brain sphere system for non-life threatening, and I mean that in the sense of a physical threat to life and limb situations, such as receiving a word wall text. So, in that moment, what is physically happening to your body is absolutely nothing. You're looking at a screen. But because of the social implications of this long, potentially emotional text that you're about to have to read and respond to, it can trigger that same ancient system that's designed to help an animal either attack or flee from danger. And this is part of the challenge of being alive, is that we're getting stressed, we're getting big mammal stress over um, uh, over our modern world. And that's not to say that, a word wall text couldn't be a pretty significant moment in your life. Someone could be dumping you via text. That would be horrible. Okay, someone also said phone call from my mom. Yeah, my son has a special ringtone in my phone, and if that tone was to go off like late at night or when I wasn't expecting it, my fight, flight, freeze would kick up instantly. When my boss texts me, yeah. So you know that something may potentially be about to go down with responsibilities. You may be about to face some adulting you don't want to do. So, a text from your boss could certainly do it. Okay. So thank you. Thank you for sharing those. Kind of hang on to this idea of what kicks off fight, flight, freeze in us modern Homo sapiens living in 2026, because we're going to talk a lot about that next time. Okay, I need to do just a little bit of a review from our neuroplasticity lecture so that I can make sure that I have everybody on board before we move forward and get into the peripheral nervous systems. I'm real pumped that we're finally here and actually meeting some of the main characters of the course. But I just want to make sure everyone was with me last time before I go too much further on. Okay, so Jasmine, if you're with me on the Zoom, can you hop on mic and just remind the class in a sentence or two what neuroplasticity is?
Hello.
Yeah,
Sorry, I'm a bit sick, so my voice is kind of gone.
that's okay.
Um, from the last class, neuroplasticity is like when the brain could rewire itself together um to maybe like new connections or like strengthening like uh or like learning something new, practicing a skill or some stuff like that.
Okay, yeah, great. Great answer, Jasmine. So, Jasmine's given us that neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to strengthen connections between neurons, and it allows you to learn new skills. So, without our neuroplasticity, we would be incapable of becoming acculturated in our native culture and becoming socialized to fit the times in which we live. We would be incapable of learning. There would be no point to sitting here in college. Okay, thank you. Jasmine, you hit on a really important part that I was hoping to hear in the answer, which is you said it's growing new connections. Because what's really important here as a takeaway from last time is not just that we know the brain has plasticity, that's cool, but we want to understand the actual biochemistry or neural anatomy that gives us that neuroplasticity. And Jasmine was dead on when she said growing new connections. So to review, in the middle of the screen, you see the gap between these two neurons, and that is the synapse that our class is arguably all about. And we've been saying when neurons that fire together wire together. And we know that neurons use both electricity and chemicals to communicate. So, one electricity or chemicals is used inside the cell to send a message from one end of the neuron to the other. And then one, electricity or chemicals, is used in the synapse to send a message between neurons. So, Melissa, if you're here, can you clarify, does electricity send the signal inside each neuron, or does electricity send the signal between neurons? All right. If I don't have Melissa, then I'm going to ask Veronica the same question. So we know electricity and chemicals are both involved in neuronal communication. And what I want to know is, does the electrical signal enable one neuron to send a message within its own body, or does the electrical signal act at the synapse and allow neurons to send messages from one to the other? I don't know if you guys are here and shy or missing from class today, but let me see if the chat can help us out. So, everybody in class, um, does electricity act within the neuron, or does electricity act between the neurons? So we have a mix of guesses of between and within. So that's just the kind of thing I need to know. It's why I ask these questions. So let's clarify. So we know we already said last time when two neurons are talking, it's not head to head. It's this configuration where one neuron's axon terminals are bumped up against another neuron's dendrites, and the synapse is the empty space between them. So the fact is that within the neuron, when it needs to send a signal, because remember, neurons can be really long, they're connecting different brain regions one to another. You even have an individual nerve cell that leaves your spinal cord and goes all the way to the tip of your toe. So this neuron could be feet long, and it's got to send the message from the part of its um, cell where decisions get made down to the communication end. And that message travels by electricity. So a wave of electricity travels down the axon of the neuron, and that allows it to signal within its own body. And unfortunately, although the biochemistry of how this electrical signal is produced is fascinating, we do not have time to learn about it in this class. So that's something I'm needing you to take on faith, that an electrical signal travels from the beginning of the axon to the end, and that's how a neuron communicates within itself. So here at the synapse, when one neuron, this neuron has just fired, meaning an electrical signal has moved down its body, and it is designed to make this neuron fire. So if it's successful, an electrical signal will move down this neuron's body. But what actually allows these two neurons to communicate? What jumps the gap in the synapse? Neurotransmitters. Yeah. So neurotransmitters get released. If we call this neuron A, then it dumps neurotransmitters onto neuron B. And neuron B does not necessarily always fire. It's not automatic. It's actually if enough neurotransmitter gets dumped on neuron B. And remember, this neuron B, he's listening to more than just one neuron. The brain's complex. So he may have another connection from another neuron nearby that's actually inhibitory. And so if neuron A was to dump its neurotransmitter onto neuron B at the same moment that this negative Nelly inhibitory neuron dumped inhibitory neurotransmitters onto neuron B, it might not fire. So it's not necessarily automatic. And we need that because it allows for computing complexity in the human brain. Okay, so we've got our synapse basics. And then, as Jasmine said up top, what neuroplasticity is on a biological level is the dendrites of neuron B growing more dendritic spines and maybe more dendrites, and the axon terminals of neuron A increasing in number so that there are more synapses between these two neurons. So you might start originally with 100 synapses between these two neurons, but if this neuron grows dendrites and this neuron grows axon terminals, you could have 200 synapses after that process of change. And that means that when neuron A fires, neuron B is much more likely to fire along with it than it was before. And so this is what scientists mean when they say nerves that fire together wire together. They mean that dendrites are growing, axon terminals are growing, and it's causing the neurons to have a greater power, or causing neuron A to have a greater power of influence over neuron B. So wonderful, wonderful review. That's sort of the underlying neuroanatomy of brain plasticity. There is one tiny detail that I forgot to mention in the Zoom last time, and that is that not only do neurons that fire together wire together, um, when neurons stimulate each other with neurotransmitter, they also nourish each other. So if neuron A sends a message to neuron B along with that neurotransmitter that's chemical communication, neuron A is actually releasing growth factors that help neuron B to thrive and survive. So neurons that frequently fire together are keeping each other alive in a sort of cooperative fashion. So they actually feed off each other as they're firing. So that's yet another way that the connections that get used a lot under the right psychological conditions are enriched and become more permanent. And when a connection is enriched, that means that whatever behavior, thought, or feeling that connection gives rise to is easier for you to produce. So, for instance, if you are practicing a new thinking style that you learned in therapy, let's say you're trying to be more self compassionate, it might feel awkward to use that new thinking style at first. And that is because the neurons that allow you to think in that new style have not grown very effective connections yet. But if you continue to practice that new style, the neurons will fire together, they'll wire together, and it'll be easier and eventually maybe automatic to think in a more self compassionate way. So, this is why I keep saying you are the author of the brain you'll have tomorrow, because we do make choices about what we practice. And you can exploit your neuroplasticity to create the brain you want to have for the years to come. Um, let's see, was that everything on neuroplasticity? I think so. Okay. So I'm super pumped because we're finally meeting some main characters of the class and talking about the body's peripheral nervous systems. So let me share my screen. like the most boring thing. Okay, so you guys should be seeing this question about the jellyfish. And I don't know if you're also seeing me. Okay, okie dokie. I lost the chat. Okay, so let me see your answers in the chat to this true or false question, which is really similar to one that you might expect to show up on the comprehension check for this unit. So I'm seeing a mix of answers, which is always interesting, but it looks like false predominates. So this is false. The jellyfish does not display bilateral symmetry. Oh no, oh no. Sorry, technical difficulties, you guys. Between this and closed captions disappearing on me, I'm not loving my computer today. Um, okay, you know what? I'm sorry. Just a brief pause for technical difficulties, and I'll be right back. Okay, I'm back with you. I would give anything to be more talented at Zoom. Okay, so jellyfish do not display bilateral symmetry. They display radial symmetry. So they have a body type similar to sponges or hydra that we've talked about in the class before because they were the ancient ancestor animal in which the nervous system first evolved. Uh, so I wanted to show you, because we're talking today about the enteric nervous system, which manages the process of digestion. And we've talked so much about these animals. I want to show you a sea anemone doing its beautiful job. So this is a sea anemone feeding. You saw it gulp that starfish. So you can see that the anemone's body is essentially a long muscular tube. And these are animals, but they're fairly simple animals. And their main gig in life is to detect food on the ocean floor. And then, as you can see, the alimentary canal, which is just the term for the entire digestive tract, so we have one too. The digestive tract is the main body feature of a sea anemone, and the starfish or other food is going to be moved down the body of the anemone by its simple nervous system. So, just to make sure we all have this bilateral symmetry concept on lock, it's we, the vertebrates, that display bilateral symmetry. So that's just where the left and right halves of the body are mirror images. So have two arms, two legs, and you can see here this horse and dog also have that body style. So this is typical of more complex animals like ourselves. And within all vertebrates, they always have a brain and a bony spinal cord. So we're included amongst that. group, and our brain and spinal cord constitutes our central nervous system. So if you can, hopefully you can also see me along with the screen. So I'm holding up this is a piece of brain where the cortex has been removed, and you can see the brain, and this white represents the spinal cord here. So we're focusing today on a nervous system that is completely disconnected from the central nervous system. So in the brain and behavior text, you learned that there are several peripheral nervous systems in the body. The text focused primarily on the somatic and autonomic. So the somatic nervous system is the nervous system that allows you to do voluntary muscle movement. So when your brain decides that it's time to do a TikTok dance or reach for a mug of coffee, and the somatic nerves in your arms connecting to your muscles are what allow you to do that intentional movement. We are not going to talk much about that system in this class because we're really focused on social interaction. And while you need to be able to move your body to socially interact, the somatic nervous system doesn't have the intriguing effects on mental well being and communication that the other two peripheral nervous systems do. So we are only paying attention to the enteric and autonomic peripheral nervous systems. So we're going to talk about the autonomic nervous system next time, but the reading from Brain and Behavior gave you a good basic introduction. This is the nervous system that creates that fight, flight, freeze response that we were discussing up top. So at all times, your body is in one of two states based on the actions of the autonomic nervous system. So you are always either in fight, flight, freeze, it might be mild, but you are always either in fight, flight, freeze, or its opposite state, which is called a couple things, sometimes called rest and digest. I really like the choice in the text they made to call it rest and regenerate. So the autonomic nervous system is toggling like a light switch between these two states all day as you go through the stuff you go through. And you're meant to experience fight, flight, freeze. It's absolutely not a bad thing. So you get keyed up, you get aroused, you get intense when the moment calls for it. And then when that stressor is over, you've gotten off the phone with your boss. You have escaped the near miss car wreck. The big dog goes around the corner. When the threat passes, then naturally the rest and regenerate system comes online to do the body's behind the scenes work of maintaining itself. And it is during rest and regenerate that our cells go through all of the natural restorative processes that keep our bodies healthy, stave off cancer and heart disease, and contribute to both our physical and mental well being. So it's very important to learn to put yourself into rest and restore. You know, we have said when we compared our culture to the Paleolithic culture that we lead more stressful and complex lives today. And I think you guys are right, you know, when you argued that. And so, you know, it's very important to learn how to downshift out of fight, flight, freeze, because the otherwise, in our incredibly complex times in 2026, our bodies will undergo too much physiological stress from being in a state of fight, flight, freeze too high a proportion of the time. So, we're going to talk next time about several ways that you can downshift your body. And this helps you with that emotional regulation that we're all chasing. So I'm going to, in the lecture videos that you'll watch for next time, it's going to explain the conditions that make fight, flight, freeze more likely. And it's going to tell you a couple of ways to turn on the rest and restore system. And then if we have time, I'm going to tell you even more ways to turn on the rest and restore, rest and regenerate system. I have some fun kind of biohacks that you can use to change your emotional experience when fight, flight, freeze has you spinning out. So, but that's all for next time. Right now, we're going to talk about the mysterious second brain that lives inside your gut. Now, you'll notice that the text, brain and behavior, didn't cover the enteric nervous system at all. So, I encourage you to pay attention to this section of the lecture because this is your main source of information. And I apologize, I cannot see the chat right now. So if anyone has an important question, please come on mic with it. Okay, so I'm going to start off by showing you the enteric nervous system of a hydra. And this is another one of these anemone-like creatures in which the most ancient nervous systems evolved in our evolutionary past. And the reason I'm using it to show you an enteric nervous system is because our modern human enteric nervous systems aren't that different than the enteric nervous system of this hydra here. So this is the hydra's body. This is sort of the head end. This is sort of the butt end. And really all it is a gigantic digestive tube. And as you can see marked in black on the outside of the hydra, these are the neurons. So they're all over in just sort of a loose net, not organized, not configured like computer circuitry, but just sort of sprinkled over the surface of that alimentary canal, that digestive tube. So then here on the right side of the screen, we're looking at a cross section of the body wall of the hydra. And these are the neurons here in purple. I'm pointing them out. There are four, and they're just loosely networked. So the enteric nervous system of a human being is incredibly similar to the enteric nervous system of a hydra. And it's absolutely fascinating. So, a lot of scientists call this enteric nervous system that is built into your gut, managing the symphony that is digestion, our second brain. And the reason that they say that is because the enteric nervous system is completely independent from the central nervous system. It doesn't require any input from the brain and spinal cord. And in fact, when we go through our main characters and learn about the different brain regions that we're going to study in this course, not a one of them is dedicated to handling digestion. There isn't. My psych students have to learn every little bit of the brainstem and which part does respiration and which part changes their heart rate and which part manages what. And there's not a region dedicated to managing digestion. The brain doesn't need to do that. The central nervous system doesn't need to do that because the enteric nervous system, working totally autonomously, is doing it for itself by itself, which is kind of wild and fascinating. And that's why scientists tend to call the enteric nervous system our second brain. So it consists of about 600 million neurons. And to give you a sense of scale, that's 5 times more neurons than you would find in the entire spinal cord. So it's pretty massive. And that's part of what allows it to be powerful. And it's embedded, as you see in the image, right there in the gastrointestinal wall. So, for you guys to really appreciate why I find the enteric nervous system so amazing, I should probably say just a bit about digestion. Digestion is a real symphony of processes. So your alimentary canal runs from your esophagus to your anus, and it's a long tube with all kinds of specialized parts along the way. So you have your esophagus, your stomach, your large and small intestines, and your colon. And all that viscera inside the body has to work in a very coordinated and very responsive fashion for digestion to go properly. So during the digestive process, food has to be moved, and that sounds simple, but it has to be moved from all these different bits of viscera into other sections. So from the large intestine to the small intestine, etc. And to do that, it has to go through a series of sphincters and valves. And we also rely on all kinds of digestive juices to break down our food and make the enzymes and nutrients available for absorption by the stomach wall. And those different, you can think of it as like squirt guns inside the stomach, squirting out different digestive juices at different times based on where in the digestive process the food is. So it's not simple, this process of digestion. So it's kind of impressive that a design as simplistic as this, just a rough net, nothing as like the complexity we'll see when we study the human brain directly. This simple net of neurons is capable of conducting this incredibly elaborate and very time sensitive process of digestion. So, how does the enteric nervous system, being that it is so simple, how does it manage that? Well, it depends on a couple of things to get the important work of digestion done. It uses specialized neurons called sensory neurons, and this is going to be an important term in the course. So you have sensory neurons that are devoted to sensing the outside world. So on the surface of your skin, for instance, you have sensory neurons that respond to touch. In the back of your eye, the rods and cones in the back of your retina are sensory neurons that respond to different wavelengths of light. Um, what you may not realize is that in your gut, in your viscera, you also have sensory neurons that are devoted to detecting changes in the gut that the enteric nervous system needs to know about to get that timing right for this, the complex process of digestion. So there's a couple types of sensory neurons found in the enteric nervous system. Some are known as chemoreceptors, and that just means that they detect chemical changes. So uh, we've been talking about a typical neuron that fires when it gets neurotransmitter from another neuron. But these sensory neurons, the ones that detect chemical changes, they fire directly off of chemicals that they are sensing in the digestive tract. There's also sensory neurons that fire when our gut stretches and moves. So they are detecting mechanical changes in the gut. And that allows the enteric nervous system, as simple as it is, to tell what chemicals are active in our tummies at any particular moment so that it can ingest the soup of bile that we need to digest our food, and to feel where food is moving through the alimentary canal in the digestive process. Okay, I want to see the chat. Okay, so those sensory neurons are a key part of the design of the enteric nervous system, and they allow it to take in needed data to conduct that symphony. And then the enteric nervous system also uses neurotransmitters just like the central nervous system does. The primary neurotransmitter of the enteric nervous system is serotonin. So, Daniela, can you give us your impression? And we haven't studied it in the course yet. Feel free to refer to the cheat sheet if you want. But Daniela, can you tell us your impression from popular culture, from past study, of what serotonin does for a human? What's it all about? Is it good to have serotonin flowing? Is it bad to have serotonin flowing? Someone's saying it's good. All right. So if I don't have Daniela, let me ask Susie the same question. And we haven't studied this together yet. So I'm just asking from life in general, what's your take on serotonin? What's your impression of what it's all about?
Well, for serotonin, it helps like our sleep, our digestion. So, and also I know when we sleep, our body is still digesting, or am I wrong? But I know that
Yeah.
it helps sleep and digestion.
Yes, the digestive process can still go on even while the central nervous system is deep in sleep. So those are two functions of serotonin. Thank you, thank you. How about, does anybody, and I'm going to look to the chat for this, does anybody, Susie said it's good. Um, what what do you take to be the effect of serotonin on mental state, mood, and well-being? You guys can answer in the chat. Promotes happiness, makes us happy. It's like a mood boost. It's the happy chemical. All right, and someone in the chat mentioned SSRIs. So SSRIs are the class of medications that are the frontline treatment for depression at this time. And they work by boosting levels of serotonin in the brain. And low levels of serotonin are correlated with depression and anxiety. So serotonin is absolutely a chemical we want. So, it turns out that of the serotonin in your body, 90% of it is located down in your enteric nervous system. 90%. So, the vast majority of the serotonin in your body is down in your gut. Now, most of that serotonin in the gut stays within the enteric nervous system, which again works totally by itself. And it's used as the signaling chemical in the enteric nervous system to conduct this symphony of digestion. But, and this is a headline, a little bit of that gut serotonin that's getting produced by your enteric nervous system can leak, can escape the enteric nervous system and make its way to the central nervous system and have an effect on our mood, our emotional stability, how confident we're feeling, and all of the things that are regulated by serotonin. So, a healthy, well functioning enteric nervous system can actually contribute to your day-to-day mental well-being and emotional regulation. So that's one of the reasons that it's so fascinating to scientists, to neuroscientists. Yeah. Why is it? Why is it that we care so much about this second brain? Besides the fact that I just think it's wild and interesting that you have an entire second independent functional nervous system down in your gut working all by itself. You know, the fact is it's not capable of cognition. So that enteric nervous system isn't going to be balancing your checkbook or deciding how to respond to one of these word wall texts, but it can trigger emotional shifts. And one piece of the data that we have to support that comes from the study of people with irritable bowel syndrome or other digestive disorders. So, a correlation that has been observed in the research literature for some time is that folks with irritable bowel syndrome are more likely to experience anxiety and depression. And that should be a little surprising because we're talking about a gut disease, and you wouldn't think that it would have an effect on the mind. When scientists first discovered this curious finding, they thought that it was the anxiety and depression causing the tummy trouble. And these poor patients probably got that annoying thing, and we don't love to hear from our doctors. They're getting told that it's all in their head. But what we now know is that the relationship is actually the other way around. So anxiety and depression co-occurs with irritable bowel syndrome at a high rate, but is not the case that the mental state is causing the irritable bowel. It's actually the case that the digestive condition is causing mental health effects. So, this is a takeaway for you for your own well being. If you happen to be someone who suffers from a digestive ailment like IBS, constipation, etc., and I think 1 in 4 or 1 in 5 Americans does go through a digestive ailment at some time, this is just another reason to encourage you to get that condition treated. Tummy trouble is something that people tend to be tough about and ignore, but hopefully, by knowing that your gut health has a direct impact on your day to day attitude, mood, and emotion, it'll make you more likely in the future to take care of that tum tum. Uh, and because a healthy enteric nervous system can actually help with your emotional regulation and your mood stability day to day because of the serotonin that the enteric nervous system is producing, and its capacity to make its way up to the central nervous system. Okay, questions about the enteric nervous system so far? So what you see on screen now is a view. We looked at the enteric nervous system in a hydra before. Now we're taking a look at it in a human being. You can see the nerve cells here represented in blue, and they are just around the canal. And then up here, you see two very important inputs to the enteric nervous system. So, um, in this class, when we study a brain region, we're always going to break it down in terms of what systems is it listening to, or regions is it listening to, and what other brain regions or areas is it talking to. So we're always going to want to know what is that system or that region listening to, and who else within the brain and the body is it talking to. So I've already said that the central nervous system and the gut are not very connected. That's kind of the miracle of the enteric nervous system, is that it operates independent of direction from the brain all by itself. And I may have already said this, but if you take a piece of human colon and remove it from the body and put it in the proper type of dish, it will actually keep functioning. It will keep working, just as it would inside the body, even though it's dissected out, because of how independent the enteric nervous system is. Um, so hopefully, you have that little takeaway from today to take care of your gut, and just to be aware of this amazing, miraculous second brain that we all have inside ourselves. With the time we have left, I want to turn our attention to the other resource that I asked you guys to review for today. I love to bring modern day cutting edge neuroscience into the class when I can. And so I asked you to check out the website for Dr. Elaine Shao, who's a researcher right here at UCLA. She's a microbiologist, and she studies the gut microbiome. So I'm hoping that you guys had a chance to take a look at this resource. And I'm wondering, Gladianne, if you will give us, in a word or a phrase, an idea of what the microbiome is. I can't see the chat, so
My idea of the microbiome is kind of just like what you eat. Like I've been eating like kefir And I heard it's like a good probiotic or prebiotic. So just things
Uh-huh.
that are keeping like your microbiome in your gut healthy.
Yeah, okay. So the microbiome itself, so you mentioned pro and prebiotics, which we'll get to. Those are potential fuels for a healthy microbiome itself. But the microbiome itself is the trillions of microorganisms that live within our bodies. And I'm going to talk, we're focused specifically because we're talking about the enteric nervous system, which manages digestion, and we're focusing on the microbes that live in our gut. And we have an interesting kind of symbiotic relationship with these trillions of little critters that are living inside us. Um, when scientists first discovered the gut microbiome, and began to study it, they had kind of a negative bias about it. They assumed that these microbes must be contributing somehow to disease or ailments. They were wrong. These microbes are helping us in a lot of ways. In fact, there are foods that we eat that we would be unable to digest for ourselves without microbes in our digestive tract participating in the digestive process. So they're literally helping us stay alive, and then our body is providing them their entire environment. So it's kind of like a cool positive symbiosis that's going on. Um, if you were to take the microbes that exist in your gut and pull them out of your body and just take a look at them, it would be a lot. It is trillions of microorganisms and it would weigh 6 pounds. So 6 pounds of you is not really you. It's all these other little critters living inside you. So I asked everybody in order to prepare for this class, to take a look at Dr. Shao's website just to get familiar with her research in general, her overall aims. So I'm hoping that you guys did that, that you had a chance to look around on the site. So on the research page, there were a lot of really interesting topics that the lab is delving into right now. So these were two that were available to investigate. So up top, you see the effects of the microbiome on maternal health and fetal neural development. So this is the mom's microbiome affecting her health and thereby affecting the fetus's brain development. And then down below, this was one of the articles that I checked out, which was about the microbiome and the neurotransmitters that it uses to send signals. There were a lot of other interesting things to take away from this website. So, in just a second, I'm going to put us into small breakout rooms. And in your group, I just want you to kind of compare what your impressions were of Dr. Shao's research. What struck you as interesting? What made you curious? And the big thing I want each group to come up with is, what questions do you have about the microbiome? So we're only going to take a couple of moments for this, and then I will try to answer your questions at the end. So here we go. You should be headed to a room now. We won't take a long time, but just share your impressions of Dr. Shao's research and come up with a question to ask me when we return. So you should be getting paired off in a little breakout room. Oh, sorry, Cindy. I'm just seeing that you are alone in the breakout room. Are you back with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Oh, closed captionings has appeared all of a sudden. Um well, you can still be prepared to ask me a question. I'm sorry you did not get a partner.
Okay.
I'll
It's
be
okay.
calling, yeah, I'll call everybody back in just a second.
Okay.
Did you get a chance, Cindy, to look around on the Dr. Xiao's website?
Well, yeah, when I went to it, I just noticed like there's like a lot of topics she had, like maternal health, and there was like other things, like specific things, but I wasn't sure how to like read onto it because I know there was like four that showed up on like the main
Yeah.
page.
Yeah, yeah. So you could kind of take from that an overview of the topics that the lab is currently investigating. And personally, I thought the maternal health one was the most interesting. I'm hoping some people looked into that because, it gets at core questions of developmental psychology and human development. Did you have a question about the enteric nervous system or the microbiome that's come up in your mind during the lecture today?
Right now, not yet. I'm not sure what to ask. I just want to get like a better understanding of like microbiome. Are we gonna
Okay.
learn more about it?
Yeah, it's really fascinating. Um, I'm gonna close the rooms and we'll hopefully have a good conversation about the microbiome when everybody comes back. Sorry
Okay.
again that you were by yourself.
It's okay.
All right, everybody should be filtering back into the main classroom here. A couple of folks are still in their breakout rooms. So, while I was unable to look at
Right.
the chat, hi, uh, you should be coming back to the main class. So one question that came up on the chat was about the vagus nerve. So I want to go into that for you guys. So what you can see in the middle of my screen is the vagus nerve.
Hold on.
Somebody's mic is on by accident. The vagus nerve is beautiful and it has two sides. As you can see, it emerges there from the base of this brainstem, and then it innervates the entire viscera. So the vagus nerve is an information superhighway that allows our brain to be aware of what's going on inside of us. Because again, to create emotion, the brain uses bodily sensation, and a lot of that comes from our viscera, our guts, and a label that we sort of slap on to what we're feeling. So our emotions depend a lot on what's going on inside the enteric nervous system and inside the viscera. And it's this beautiful vagus nerve that allows for the communication that goes on between the enteric nervous system and the central nervous system. The enteric nervous system doesn't listen to the brain hardly at all. It listens a little bit to the autonomic nervous system, which we'll talk about next time. So it's not listening to anybody. It really is completely independent. It's its own boss. It's working for itself by itself. But the brain is pretty invested in knowing what's going on within your gut, and it has a lot of influence on us subconsciously, which we'll get to. Okay, so I want to hear some questions from the class about what we've learned so far today, the enteric nervous system or the fascinating microbiome. If you can come on mic to ask your question, that would be great. Someone said, Seren said, can changing the microbes in the gut help treat symptoms of neurological diseases? Seren, this is an excellent question. You are thinking like a neuroscientist. And the answer is yes. So this is part of Dr. Shao's research. She came up in a lab that was devoted to the study of autism spectrum disorder. And one way that neuroscientists study autism is using a special breed of mice that are bred to have autism-like symptoms. So they have communication deficits similar to humans with autism spectrum disorder. The mice that are, autistic, we'll say the autistic mice, don't vocalize as much, and their vocalizations don't tend to be communicative or make sense to other mice in the rodent community. So those are symptoms that are really similar to the symptoms that are observable in folks on the autism spectrum. So what Dr. Shao did as a graduate student, um, she took some of these autistic mice and she transplanted their microbiomes. So they were raised in a completely sterile environment, and so they had no gut flora to begin with. And she took the microbiome of a healthy, normally communicating non-autistic mouse and transplanted it into the gut of an autistic mouse. And the autistic mice who received that microbial transplant began to communicate more normally, more effectively. So, this is a really exciting new area of research where people are looking into whether we can use the microbiome itself, whether we can alter it in a way that will improve things like anxiety and depression. And it's really being looked at with autism, epilepsy as well. So, yes, changing the microbes in our gut can have an effect on neurological conditions. Okay, another question. Can it be transferred? Can someone with strong microbes transfer them to someone with weak microbes? Okay, yes. So this is one of the cutting edge treatments that psychologists are trying to do for people who are suffering treatment resistant depression in particular. I'm sorry, it's gross, but it's a poop transplant. So, a fecal transplant is used to introduce healthy gut flora, healthy microbiota into the gut of someone who's suffering from a mental illness or a neuropsychiatric condition. So, that's happening right now in medicine. Um, so strong, healthy microbes can be transferred to the gut of someone with a dysfunctional microbial environment, and that can have a direct impact on their mental health symptoms. They're going back to Seren's question, if whether changing the microbiome can treat neuropsychiatric conditions. There's also a lot of research going on right now in what are called psychobiotics, and that is sort of like probiotics on steroids. The idea there is that you would use drugs to change the microbiome, and that change to the microbiome would have a positive effect on the psychiatric symptoms that you're trying to treat. Other questions from the class about this absolutely fascinating system? Megan, thank you. This is a great question. Can we feed or increase our microbes? I'm so glad you asked that because it's one of the main takeaways I wanted to be sure to mention. So if you walk through a Whole Foods and you're going down the wellness aisle, you're going to see probiotic everything. And some of these probiotics, I'm issuing a caution. Y'all know I'm not that kind of doctor. I just have a PhD. So ask your real doctor for advice about anything you want to take. But I have a caution about the whole world of probiotics when it comes to increasing our microbiome's health and having a positive effect on our mood and well-being. Some of these probiotic products are using probiotics that don't even feed the microbes in a human gut. They're not necessarily very well regulated. And so, if you're advised to take them to treat a gut condition like IBS or constipation, I very much agree that you should take the probiotics that your doctor recommends. But if you see a container of probiotics that's trying to promise you that it's going to give you mental clarity or boost your attention and focus, I think you're getting sold a can of flim flam. The best way to increase the health of your microbiome, which you should be very excited to do after learning about how it can affect things like anxiety and depression, is to eat a wide variety of plant foods. So you can imagine it as if, all the different microbes in the gut. There's like one critter who loves kale, there's another one who's crazy about celery. It's really fruits and vegetables that give the microbes what they need to thrive and survive in the mini environment that they have built within us. So, unfortunately, we can't necessarily buy ourselves a healthy microbiome in a jar. I wish it was that easy. We need to feed ourselves with a wide variety of produce. So that old saying, eat the rainbow, really applies here if you're looking to get that mental health benefit um, from increasing the health of your particular microbiome. Other things you can do to keep your microbiome healthy is, take watch out on overdoing it with processed foods that contain a lot of really simple starch or really simple sugar. Those tend to fuel the nasty critters in the microbiome rather than the healthy and health promoting ones. So you may have noticed this, that if you eat tons of so-called junk food, you begin to feel sluggish, or you can lose focus, and some people even feel that it can make them irritable. Um, Also, alcohol has an effect on the microbiome. So, a little bit of alcohol, like a glass of wine a day, is probably not going to have an effect, but a session of binge drinking is absolutely going to wreck your microbiome. No surprise. It's a caustic chemical. So if you fill your guts with alcohol, it will mess your microbiome up for several days. And this might actually be part of what we're feeling when we're feeling a hangover, is the dysregulated microbiome kind of messing with our mood and emotions. Um, Yeah, and then Malia said, "Is this part of the reason that diet affects our well-being so much?" Yeah, it really is, and that's something I hope you get as a takeaway. All too often, especially in LA, where unfortunately we're very image conscious, people have a focus on when they think about diet, they're thinking about how they want to look or something like that. But the fact is that taking the time to, you know, seek out produce at the grocery store or where the farmer's market or wherever you shop, and to prepare that produce, or, even if you're depending on buying your food out and about, picking salads, picking a wide variety of vegetables is going to potentially have bigger effects than you might have expected on your mood and emotions. Um, so let me see if there's any questions I've missed. Okay, so I'll just use the remaining 4 minutes that I have of your time to just give you a bit of a preview of what we're talking about next time. So next time we're talking about the autonomic nervous system, and you got familiar with it on this page of the text. We're going to come back to this image next time. This is an illustration of the autonomic nervous system. And again, it has two branches. So in red, you see the branch that kicks off fight, flight, freeze. And it's arranged as a bunch of nerves coming from the sort of middle of your spinal cord. And as you can see, it's, oh, sorry. Oh my God, someone's phone went off in class. So rude. So it emerges from the middle of the spinal cord and it's affecting organs of the body ranging from your eye to your heart and lungs, your entire viscera. So this fight, flight, freeze effects has powerful tail to toe whole body effects on you. And you can see that the side of the autonomic nervous system that creates fight, flight, freeze do you see how there's sort of like this column to it that you don't see on the rest and restore side? That's biologically significant. The fight, flight, freeze response, when it happens, it's all or nothing. So the whole response happens to you all at once, whether you're just looking at a text or actually, running from a big dog or being in a near miss car crash. The rest and restore system, as you can see, the nerves that serve it are kind of more spread out and they don't have that central column. So it's able to come on bit by bit. So you can be doing digestion or one part of the rest and restore cycle without it affecting the whole body all at once as dramatically as fight, flight, freeze does. And that's part of why they feel different. So we'll talk next time. To prepare for next time, you're going to be watching two of my Wacky Pandemic lecture videos that are going to teach you about the fight, flight, freeze response and how to engage rest and restore so that you can give your body time in that restorative cycle and increase your well-being, emotional regulation, and potentially also your physical health down the line. All right, that is all I have for you today. Thank you guys. Thank you for exploring the enteric nervous system with me. I'll see you next time.